Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habīb. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who are not yet sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine God, Yahweh, Allah, Elohim, Brahman, Great Spirit, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersections of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Debra Graugnard. Debra's experience with hypoglycemia, fibrocystic disease, and ulcerative colitis led to her healing journey and embarking on a path of holistic living and healing for the physical body, the emotional body, and the spirit. She studied with Shaykh Muhammad al-Jamal in Jerusalem, and then she worked and studied at the University of Sufism for over 15 years. Now, Debra is a master teacher and healer who is passionate about helping others heal their relationship with food and their bodies, as well as inviting others to know and honor the divine feminine more fully. Debra is the author of While We Were Silent. She's also the author of Bridging the Gaps and her most recent book, Fear, Food, and Feminine Power, a sacred pathway of transformational healing. To learn more about Debra and her work, please visit communityforconsciousliving.com. For her latest book, please visit fearfoodfemininepower.com. Debra, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing all about your book. I understand that you've got a healing program that is part of the book. I want to hear about that too. But before we get into all of that, can you start us off introducing yourself by telling us a bit about your spiritual story?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Habib. I appreciate you and I appreciate this introduction. Thank you so much for having me, and all of those of you who are listening, thank you for listening. Um, so, in terms of my spiritual story, I'll back up to the point where I was living day to day, just trying to figure out life, trying to do life, trying to get through. Um, was nowhere. I was working in a high tech job in a corporate high tech corporation, and I went to a class to learn a new local area networking protocol. And in that class, it just so happened that someone from another company came to that class, was like a last minute thing. And we started out having this just normal conversation. What company do you work for? Where'd you come from? Blah, blah, blah. And through the course of the conversation, far, far, far from seeking or spirituality, talking tech, suddenly the two of us together were like we were sucked out of our bodies, like being sucked through a sieve, and we were transported to a different place. The first place that we like landed into was this scene where we were sitting in a desert, and I was a Native American man and he was a white man, and we were talking. We were friends. We like knew each other. We knew things about each other, and it was like, wow. And we were at the same time kind of looking around going, are other people seeing this? But we were seeing the same thing and having this conversation on the inner. The next place we landed into, I was like a woman in my 30s, long dark hair, and I had three children, and I was really tired. And he was like, I could see the house we lived in, all of these things. This happened. It was a 5 day class. It happened from day one to day five, every single day, multiple times a day. Like all we'd have to do is look each other, and then we'd just like go. And that was an experience that totally like blew open all of my extrasensory perception. Uh, I was seeing things, hearing things, all of this stuff. And like all of that is like the wow factor of it. But the
Yeah.
really life-changing transformation part of it is that, like, in that particulate state of like traveling through, became an embedded awareness and an embodied awareness that everything is love, and all of
Mm.
the things that I worried about and got angry about and, fretted over and everything else, they just didn't really matter. Everything was love, and love was all there is. And it
Yeah.
was just this overwhelming existential, that's it.
Yeah.
And that completely changed my life forever. Now, fast forward a little bit, I went back home and I'm like, oh, okay, now what? And, because I'm still living in the same place and I'm still working the same job and I have the same friends and acquaintances and everything. And I'm like going through the motions, but the motions didn't fit anymore. And
Right.
I had a different knowing in my body, but I could find myself still like start to fall into old habits. And I'd be like, whoa, wait, that just does not fit. So I found myself, and I'm skipping over a lot of pieces, but I found myself one night literally on my knees on the floor in my room, and I was praying. And I said the words, I just need a teacher who will come and take me by the hand and teach me how to live in this world and in this body with this knowing that I have now, because it was a very strong mismatch. And then right then, I got this real strong whoosh. And this teacher that I didn't know who it was at the time came and started teaching me and taught me for about a year before I finally met him in person. And I mean, it was beautiful because it was with me all the time. It was teaching me, it was, like teaching about how mind, body, spirit actually work, how that connection actually works, and the misalignment, and
Mm.
how, I mean, taught me so much about healing through forgiveness and how energies move in the body when you really drop down and forgive, like how much it just like lift from your being. And it was just like I was having all of these experiences for about a year with this guy that was with me. And then circumstances led me to California, to the what's later became the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism.
Yeah.
And I walked into, at this place we called the Land, I walked into this building that we called the mosque. And he was sitting on the floor teaching a group of students. And instantly my heart cracked open, like just like, a coconut. And it just, the contents melted and poured out onto the floor. And I just stood there looking at him. And he looked up, he was sitting on the floor and, teaching to a group of students. And he looked up and he, waved his hand and motioned for me to come and sit in front of him. And he says, he took my hands and he said, Beloved, what is in your heart? And I said, I got scared because I thought he was going to say, some like it was the devil dancing around in there or something, because I didn't know which part he was looking at. And, so I said, I don't know. And he says, deep, deep, deep longing for God. And then he put his hands over my head and said some prayers in his native language of Arabic. And I just like soared all over again. I say my feet didn't touch the ground for 2 weeks. I was just flying. And then from that point forward, I studied with him in person.
Mhm.
I ended up moving to the Land and working with the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism. And I worked there for, at different times.
Mhm.
The first time 9 years, the second, then I was on the board for a while. And then the second time I went back to work with them for a couple more years. And, it's been a long involvement and just a beautiful experience of, I feel like even though we're right at not at 10 years since he passed from the body, but I still feel like he's here,
Mhm.
God willing. That's is something that I hope will never go away.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's where we met.
Yes, that's where we met. There's so many parts of your story that I'm touched by, and of course I'm touched by your remembrance of our guide, CD, that we call him, Shaykh Muhammad al-Jamal. may he rest in peace and may Allah sanctify his secret. And yes, I feel that he's still with me too, I guess, is, I when I did a 40-day retreat with Fauzia, um, Dr. Rosina Fauzia Al-Rawi, to give her
Mhm.
complete name, um, one of the things that she quickly identified was that I had trouble receiving and giving love. And she's like, you must practice.
Yes.
And so I did this exercise where I would visualize the divine name, the unifying name of God in Arabic, Allah, that I visualize the name written in Sidi's heart and I visualize it written into my heart. And so I just visualize this love flowing from God through Sidi's heart to me, through the divine name in his heart to the divine name in my heart, and then back and forth. It's like this loop and exchange and flow. And so that's how I first practiced to the idea of receiving and giving love in a holy way, because at that point in my life, I did not have much experience with love that was clean, pure,
Hmm.
healthy. Like just
Yeah.
and so ever since then I felt like that there is a place in my heart where he is, like that connection. And the fact that he passed from this world didn't affect that,
Yes.
that it's still there. Yeah. So thank you for thank you for that reminder. And then also I just wanted to mention that the power of those experiences. And I love hearing about others people's um, moments of spiritual awakening and the moments that are especially pivotal in their spiritual journey. And I noticed that you said everything is love as a phrase. And while I didn't have those moments before I came to the spiritual path that I'm currently on, Sufism, um, started having those at some point after, embarking on Sufism and studying Sufism and taking on the spiritual practices of Sufism and doing all of the practices that are associated with Islam and with Islamic mysticism. And yet, when I did start having those experiences, they were very similar in just
Yeah. Yeah.
how the language that you use. I was like, oh, that sounds very similar to how I described those experiences where I felt like there was no me anymore, that there was just love, that,
Mhm.
that there was just this. And I've had multiple experiences where, in different circumstances, from being at home alone, doing an all-night prayer retreat, or when visiting the tomb of Abraham in Hebron, so in a variety of contexts, with a lot of people around, with no one around. But the commonality has been this all pervasiveness of love, as if
Yeah.
as if there is only love, as if there is nothing but love. That that love is what's the essence of our own beings, and that love is
Mhm.
the essence of who God is in truth. And
Yeah.
if we can let go of all the barriers and all the veils, that's what's true and real.
Yeah. That's
So
beautiful.
thank you for that reminder as well, because it's such an important thing to set as our barometer, or as our compass,
Right. As
as
our
we move in our daily lives, which are often not in that state.
right, right. It's that remembrance, right? To remind ourselves, like, where's the love in this? If everything is truly a reflection of the divine and the existence of creation, it's either showing us perhaps there's a bigger picture, or, there's the phrase that says, know yourself to know your Lord. And it's like
Yeah.
everything that we see gives us a reflection of, does that look like love or does that not look like love? Right. And it um, is bringing it back to the daily life. I think there's always an inner voice that's saying, is that safe? Is that love? Is that real? Like those things. Is that something that's going to like bring me closer to connection
Yeah.
with all that is? Is that something that feeds the deepest yearning, that part that's so subconscious for most of us, or for a lot of us, certainly was for me before my spiritual awakening, that just really yearned to like have that connection with source, with the source of love, with the source of compassion, with like the truly real, what's truly real in this existence. And so there's that barometer in the heart that does know love, that's constantly asking about, is that love? I don't think that's love.
Yeah.
But what does that tell you when you like see it as a mirror and a reflection of the divine? It tells you what you know in your heart that love truly is. Right. So it's kind of like we can get mad at the thing that looks like it's not love, but we can also look back inside to the part of us that says, oh, yes, I recognize that that is not love because this is what love is. This is what love would look like. And thank you for that mirror that shows me about what's true.
Yeah. So in this process that you described, that you talking about asking that one, like being aware. So there's a heartfulness that's kind of like step one, this heartfulness that you're approaching the world in, and an awareness that comes from that place of heartfulness, and it being present with what's in you, as well as being present with what's around you, what's in the world, and then asking for um, synchronicity or alignment with that truth of love. And that points to that earlier you mentioned this dissonance when you first had, I think you said you were in a seminar, a tech seminar of all things.
Yeah, in a class.
So like you're in a tech seminar, and then you have this mind-blowing spiritual experience, but it begins to awaken you to this dissonance. And so then you begin this journey that is around like being in relationship with something that's deeper and true and reconciling this dissonance with this experience, right? And so that's led you to become a healer and to become a teacher. And so that leads me to the question like, one, what does being a healer mean? I think for a lot of people, they might not necessarily have a context for like what is a spiritual healer?
Yeah, it's a very good question because I can honestly say all of that you just laid out there. I did not have cognitive awareness of that in the moment. Like,
Yeah.
all I knew is like, something's not right here and it's really frustrating. you know? And I think that, like we talked about having that mirror and that reflection, for me, I guess what it means to be a healer
Mm,
is to, from the depths of my heart, really like what I want to hold for a healing client, for
mhm,
example, or for a group is like that witnessing as best I can from my humanity and from
mhm,
my human body of that place of divinity in your own heart.
mhm,
And my desire in that role is to reflect that for you all of the time.
mhm,
So, because that is ultimately what it will be, your compass that guides you home to yourself to find your own truth.
mhm,
And if I try to tell you what is true from my perspective, then I run the risk of putting more pictures on top of the pictures you're already carrying about what's real and what's not, right? So
mhm,
to hold that place of love and be that reflection, that mirror, so that you can feel that place in your own heart
Mm-hmm.
that guides you home, and then help you to find that way and to overcome the blocks and barriers and the hurdles, the obstacles, and to believe in yourself
Yeah.
and your own, like the divinity is there, the love is real, and not give up. You know, to me, I think that's the beauty of serving in the role as a healer, or I call it a healing practitioner, because there's God, source, Allah is the healer. Um, but, and I do believe that I've, been um, given the passion and the tools
Mm-hmm.
to be in that form of service for someone, to help them to find the truth. That Bridging the Gaps workbook that you talked about, and the healing process that's in all of my books, in my latest book as well. There's um, a process. It's like multi parts, but first identifying what are the pieces, and then taking that journey to the center of yourself. How is what you're seeing on the outside that may feel really icky
Mm-hmm.
telling you about what's real and true for you, and what your core values are,
Mm-hmm.
and what your core beliefs are? And then how does that really tell you about who you are? Right. And then coming into a place of recognizing your truth as it aligns with your highest self or your connection with source. And then there's the process of transformation, like becoming, where the knower becomes that which is known, right? That infusion of the vibration of like the divine names and the divine powers that are reflected within us. And then coming into a state of embodiment to really be,
Mm-hmm.
to be. And so to me, that's a healing journey. And that's what the healer is here to help you find, or from my perspective anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned your book. Again, it's the title is Fear, Food, and Feminine Power, a Sacred Pathway of Transformational Healing. So I'm assuming from what you've just said that part of what you're sharing in the book is an integration of your own healing journey and your own experience, your personal experience of healing in relation to your own body and your own mind and your your own thoughts and your own patterns. And then you've sharing that how you arrived at what you've arrived at now is that integration of the personal experience and experiencing healing individually, and then experience that has grown into sharing healing with others, and that's grown into a healing process that you're sharing in this book. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
accurate. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So why don't
if
you
you'd
tell us
like,
a little bit more about that?
okay. Yeah. If you'd like, I can back up to, just my personal story. You mentioned that I struggled with hypoglycemia, fibrocystic disease, ulcerative colitis, all of those. And, um, when I was first diagnosed with the ulcerative colitis, it came about a month after a traumatic experience, which actually it wasn't the childhood trauma, which later kind of got unearthed beneath that. But the traumatic experience in the moment was I had been held at gunpoint in a bank robbery, and
Mm,
the gun was pressed into my back. And about a month later, I started having back spasms and internal bleeding and all of this that then became diagnosed as ulcerative colitis. And so the doctor was like, people get it. Once you get it, you have it. There's no cure. But here you can take these steroids and don't ever eat fiber again. No raw fruits, no raw vegetables, eat no wheat bread, just eat white bread, eat potatoes, eat, stuff like that. And take these steroids and then we'll just manage the symptoms. And so I started out down that road and I was like, no, there is a gun in my back. You can't see it. What I'm experiencing is like this terror of that gun firing off and my insides exploding, and that's where that internal bleeding is coming from. Like even this was before my spiritual awakening time, but I did have that recognition of no, the bleeding is in the spasms is because there was a gun in my back and I need to get that gun out. And so that was, I guess, even before the spiritual awakening, that was a part of the realization. And I knew, like, I had heard horrible things about long-term use of steroids, and they are true, right? I think if I had gone that route, I would not be alive right now. And I had, so I knew I didn't want to do that. So my first thing I started looking at was juicing and cleansing and all of that. And that did wonders for my body, really helped my body. It cleared up the fibrocystic disease, the hypoglycemia, and the ulcerative colitis, all of it. And so taking that path was like step number one. And then the spontaneous spiritual awakening came and just like blew everything out of the water. That's what got me to understand about energy in the body and how energy moves. And that energetically, there was a gun in my back that I needed to get out. Prior to that, what led to the hypoglycemia and fibrocystic disease. I mean, I did have some childhood trauma, and I think, most of us do. I mean, everybody does, right? It's like it lays out the pathways that we're going to travel of how we're going to disconnect from ourselves and forget the truth of the brilliant sparks and brilliant lights that we are. And then that ends up being a doorway back. It doesn't define you, but it ends up being a doorway back to discover the brilliance that you are. And so I had the childhood trauma. I also had, my father was a third generation French baker, and I grew up working in the family business. So between trauma and like just this way that I would internalize and hide inside of myself, I had unlimited access to sweets because I spent a good part of my childhood in a bakery surrounded by brownies and cookies and cupcakes and everything else, right? So I doused quite a bit of sweets. And then I just, growing up, and I was a teenager in the 70s, and it was the sex, drugs, and rock and roll era of this. I did what I felt like I needed to do to fit in, and I ended up coming out of that with a lot of shame and a lot of just. I'll say that when I first did the juicing and cleansing, like on one level, that bank robbery was a bad thing. On another thing, it got me to cleanse my body. The first thing that, like the mental clarity that came from that, I didn't realize that I had been in a sugar coma my whole life until I wasn't anymore. So that's kind of like part of where the fear from the trauma, from childhood trauma and from childhood illness. I had a heart condition, and I had to take medicine, and it turned my teeth black. So I had black teeth that looked like charcoals, literally that dark in my mouth. And so that, caused some isolation, shall we say, that I wasn't always accepted when I went places. And usually the reaction was, ooh, gross. And, kids would gather around looking at my mouth going, ooh, gross, what is that? And of course, I would think it was about me, not about my teeth. And so I heard, ooh, gross, what's wrong with you? As they were saying, ooh, gross, what's wrong with your teeth? And so I just it really got me to hide inside myself. And I had other childhood trauma along with it. And so I just had this way of hiding. Whereas I recognized that I could, when I was in a crowd, I felt more alone than ever because I just couldn't shrink enough to become invisible. But when I was by myself, I felt more free. And, so just like all of that starts to unravel after you've awakened to love and to different possibilities, right? All of that starts to unravel, and you can see more clearly that, all of that has been a pathway to teach you about just how beautiful you really are, to teach you about how vibrant you are, how strong you are, how, like, what a being of light and love and compassion that you are.
Mm,
And it becomes like a beacon that guides you home. So um,
mm,
that's kind of what set up for the fear, food, and feminine power, because I
mm,
was the perfect storm for fear and then food, and then
mm,
recognizing that what is being suppressed when we self-soothe with food, right? I self-soothe with food a lot.
mm,
And what is being suppressed inside, it's like what is being comforted underneath the suppression is the part of me that is that beautiful, brilliant being that really knows the truth of who and what you are, that really knows that connection with source, that really knows your brilliance and what you're here for, and feels the purpose and the passion. And so when we can recognize what's really happening in our bodies, what's really happening in our hearts, and put that together and say, oh, okay, I recognize you. These are just the signs and signals that there's something else inside. What is inside? And that becomes like your pathway to discover your personal power and your light and your brilliance. So that's where fear, food, and feminine power, where it merges, right? Because it kind of sounds like, and I've heard this from a number of people, well, fear and food, that's one thing, feminine power, that's another thing, like, how do you put those together? But what is being suppressed? And where this really ties in, I'll just I, state it clearly, where it really ties in with the feminine part of it is
mm,
because it actually starts out more than 50% of women report feeling unsafe just by virtue of being in a female body. Food is an
mm.
effective crutch that helps us to feel safe and secure. So
Yeah.
does that mean that we're doomed to live with fear, self-soothe with food, and wrestle with a body that portrays the struggle, whether it's through body image, through weight, through digestion, through health, like the body portrays the struggle. Are we doomed to live with fear, self-soothe with food, and wrestle with the body? What we're not, right? I think not. Absolutely not. And
I'm glad to hear
yeah, and
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw in there that I am the child of a binger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I grew up in a house of my mother when I was in graduate school studying psychology. I realized that, in studying all the diagnostic tools and so on that psychologists use, I realized, oh, so yeah, my mother had a major depressive disorder, uh, and it was never diagnosed, it was never treated. She never got any care for that in any way. And how she coped was through binge eating.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a house with um, a large utility room with an extra full-sized refrigerator and an extra full-sized freezer. So um, it was normal to have at least 5 cartons of ice cream in the freezer at any given time. There were shelves, plural, in the pantry with like super processed food,
Uh-huh.
sweet treat things, of every kind and variety. There were bags of M&Ms. I mean, it was just, and so it's been hard for me to like not become my mother, like as
Oh
you're talking
yeah.
about this connection between food and fear and feminine power, I'm like, well, what about the man,
You know,
the little boy who learned that behavior from his mother and became a man and is like, yeah, I don't want to turn into my mother.
yeah,
May she rest in peace. And obviously that's not all of who she was, but that was a part of who she was,
yeah,
and that was a part. Um, so I'm thinking, okay, I need this is has been a part of my walking, and it still is a part of my journey. It's still part of my relationship to myself and my relationship to food and my relationship to my body. So I very much look forward to reading your book, and I'm hoping that you would be willing to share a passage from your book. Does that sound like something you would?
Yes, I
Yeah,
would love to. I would love to. And I will say the thing that makes this, if I can just say, the thing that makes this specific to women is
yeah.
we do talk about um, the how women are portrayed, and I'm not saying that men have it any better. I think
Mm,
that let me just say there's a Native American proverb that I quote in here that you may have heard before that says the highest calling of a woman is to lead a man to his soul so as to unite him with source. The lowest calling of the woman is to seduce a man, lead him astray, and leave him wandering. The
mm,
highest calling of the man is to protect the woman so she is free to walk the earth unharmed. The lowest calling of the man is to ambush her and force his way into her life and bring harm. So, what the book looks at first and foremost is
mm,
our culture right now,
mm,
on the whole, just, collectively speaking, is more aligned with the lower calling of seduction and ambush rather than the highest calling of the guiding and communing with source, guiding and protecting. And so in the book, the goal of the book is to bring us from that um, immersion in our psyche and our patterning, our
yeah.
belief systems,
Yeah.
from immersion in that lower to immersion in the higher,
Hmm.
where the woman is that which, when you think about your own, like when you go into meditation, when you do your spiritual practices, where you're going into is that place of the internal, that state of being, that state of connectivity, that state of reception. And like just archetypically speaking, that is the feminine, right? That feminine is that state of being, that state of connection, that state of receiving. And
Hmm.
the masculine is that state of moving out and being in action, right? And so ideally, it's like right now we come back and we do our meditation and we replenish and that, and then when we're it's typically then it's like, okay, meditation's done, now I got to go get busy and do these things, right? Ideally, when the two merge, you
Yeah.
have that place of connection and you have that place of being and that place of doing. And when they are merged, the doing becomes an agent for the light. And so, that masculine is what navigates and protects this connectivity and receptivity of light, the channel, the womb, the feminine is the bridge between the worlds that brings new life force into form. And there's, a lot that we talk about in the book about that as well, about, when you are in the womb, you are
Hmm.
in that place of being held. You are in this container of pure compassion, and
Hmm.
you're being fed through an umbilical cord, which gives you provision and sustenance that you don't have to work for. And it might not always be that your mother is the perfect mother and that's a perfect experience, but that connectivity, spiritually speaking, and I tell some stories about that as well in the book, is there.
Hmm.
So on the spiritual level, you do have that connection. You do have that provision, that sustenance, that protection. And then when you're born and the umbilical cord is cut, that's where I talk about the Planet Earth reality show. And you've got your team members, your family's your team members in the Planet Earth reality show. And
Yeah.
we're here to first get lost and then to figure out how to get back home. It's just
Yeah.
like a reality
Yeah.
show on TV, the Survivor show. But
To forget
so
and to remember. Yeah.
yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's see. I think I'll read from um I I'm going to set this one up too because I think I'm going to read from. We've kind of talked about the the struggles piece. But so I
Mhm.
think I'll read from I have a Sacred Essence Manifesto.
Okay.
And the way that this actually came is because after our teacher, CD, had passed, Shaykh Muhammad al-Jamal had passed, a group of us got together and said, let's put together stories in a book and of what we learned from him.
Mm.
And so we were each contributing a chapter. And I was sitting in bed one night, with my pen and paper, thinking, okay, right. And nothing was coming. So I said, okay, I'll put the pen and paper on my nightstand, went to sleep. 4 o'clock the next morning, literally woke up like this, getting the pen and paper on the way up and started writing and wrote over 5,000 words before then I finally read it back. And it was
Wow.
like, this is what I was trying to tell you all this time, right? It was like he was finally saying, look, this is what I was trying to tell you. And that story became um, the four truths about the feminine, which honestly I had never really had an interest in what was feminine before, other than I had experienced a lot of inequality because of
Mhm.
being in a female body, which made me very angry.
Yeah.
And so this is from that. It's not 5,000 words, but it is an excerpt from that I've come to call the Sacred Essence Manifesto.
Mm.
And I'm going to read it in the book. It's written as a I am, and so you can read it as an I am and repeat after, kind of a repeat after me. I'll read it, and it is as a woman, but everyone has an inner feminine and an inner masculine. Everyone has that place of connectivity and
Yeah.
that place that we can go to really be in communion with source.
Mhm.
And so hear this in the way that it resonates for your heart,
Mhm.
because everyone is a beloved, right?
Yes.
Everyone is a beloved. And the
Yes.
heart of the seeker knows. So this says, as a woman, and you can translate that to what, and I'll say this to all listeners and to whatever uh, form you're in, you can translate this for yourself. As a woman, read it, you are created as a sacred being with gifts and abilities that are inherent in your creation, that are extremely powerful beyond the power of this earthly realm. And this goes for everybody. You are worthy of love, honor, and respect, no less than that from anyone, including yourself. Your divine essence is a bridge between the worlds, a bridge to source. You carry the wisdom of earth and spirit. You are a nurturer and protector of life, a knower and connector of the subtle realms, with true power and strength beyond worldly physical strength. This is a truth of creation, a truth of existence, and it does not change regardless of what you have done or not done in your life. This is not dependent on the beliefs you have in yourself. This is a divine truth. Thank you, CD, for those words, or Allah for those words.
Mm.
This is a divine truth. No matter what has ever happened to you, no matter what you've done or not done, you are
Yeah.
worthy of love, honor, and respect, no less than that from anyone, including yourself. You're a bridge between the worlds, the connector of the subtle realms and the earth realms. And
Yeah. While you're reading that, I'm I can't help but think about my own journey, my
mm-hmm,
own struggle with the I don't even have the words, but the lasting remnants of early childhood traumas and just how significant they can be for our lives and how they can continue to impact our self-perception and our relationship to our bodies and it's so um, challenging sometimes to to take on a new awareness, a new truth, and to embody it. And I noticed that earlier you used the word embodiment in relation to your healing process. And so, and so just in thinking of how I have personally struggled with self-acceptance, how I've personally struggled with self-esteem, how I've personally struggled with shame,
Yeah.
um, and how, like, intellectually, I can say, okay, yes, I know that when the self came into the body, the ego self was separated from the soul self, and the ego was given free will, and I can, this teaching that in our essence, in our the deepest truth, we are pure light that has not been corrupted, that is sacrosanct, that is truly pure goodness and love and light in our essence. And yet, yeah, to hear that as a teaching and the process into the mind is very different from embodying it, like getting it in the
Absolutely.
heart and getting it. So I understand that you have developed a healing process to do that, right? To get us from the place of here is a part of my relationship to my body, or here's a mental construct or a mental pattern or whatever. Here's this part where the love and the light and the truth is not operating to its greatest extent.
Well done.
It's a polite way of saying this part is operating in illusion, in falsehood, in darkness, and we want to move that part being to receiving the love and receiving the light and embodying it, because then you are integrating the masculine and the feminine. Then you have, if the receiving the love and the light allows you to embody it and then share it. So all of which is to say, tell us more about this healing process, if you will.
Yes, I will. Thank you. And embodiment really is what makes it different, what takes it to the next level. Is the um, well, I'll tell you, it's a seven-step healing process. It's called the CARITAS, CARITAS, and that is an acronym, but it happens to mean love and compassion in Latin. And interestingly, I had this seven-step process that I didn't have I had a name for it, but it wasn't an acronym. And
Mhm.
when I finished the book, or thought I finished the book at one point, and I sat with it and I said, kind of went into meditation, went into prayer, and I said, okay, is there anything else? And the guidance came in and said, yes, lean into the Ibn Arabi teachings. Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi is one of my favorite teachers of the Sufi mystics, and said, lean into the Ibn Arabi teachings more. And I was like, that's pretty broad, but I am enamored with his cosmology of sound um, teachings, and so I was like, okay, can you like guide me, be a little more specific? And it said, take your seven-step process and put it up against Ibn Arabi's teachings on the seven heavens. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took it and lined it up. And I was like, wow, that's actually pretty close going from the beginning of the process to the end. So I changed the language and, put to align more and then really put more into the embodiment part into a process of assimilating what your head believes, what your heart knows, and what your sacral center like is. Like your I believe center, your I know center, your I am center, where you're really grounded in that wellspring of life force energy at the core of your sacral. That what do they call that in the Chinese medicine? The Jing. Um,
Mhm.
and it's like, so that is but bottom line, so lining those two things up I saw the acronym of CARITAS, and I'm like, I know that word. And I looked it up, and it's Latin for love and compassion. And I was like, how perfect is that? So I went back and, rewrote those parts of the book to include those pieces and, tweak the names. The final step is sovereignty. And the cool thing about the seven heavens is that you have, you like, on one side of the seven heavens, you have the earth dimensions, and you have this realm of constriction where our consciousness is constricted into this three-dimensional reality and, not necessarily aware of what's happening in the heavens and what's happening in the cosmic dimensions. And so between the earth dimensions, there's the seven heavens, then there's the cosmic dimensions, which is like, the universal body and the universal soul and the pure mind of God and the formation of the cosmos, the laws of nature, all of that. And the last thing when you're like the C in Caritas, so from the earth dimension starts when you're starting to get clarity on, what your situation is and what your, like, where your struggle is, what's not lining up, right? We've been talking about what lines up and what doesn't. You start to get clarity of like, oh, that's not matching. And then the final is sovereignty, where you're no longer pulled back into the ways of the world, of the material realm. And you're like, you have the divine name that governs that sovereignty, that realm of sovereignty, is a Rab, which is the sovereign, the masterful nurturer, as the Mani calls it, and that is that is the realm of cherishing. We talk about that love, but that's the realm of like where you are cherished. That love, that cherishing. And that just supersedes everything. And when you can find that, like, okay, I have transformed myself energetically, vibrationally, God willing, to really like be the divine powers that, that like we talked about the journey to the center of yourself, where you discover what that truth is inside of yourself. And then the knower becomes that which is known. It's like that vibrational shift of this is what I know. This is who I am. This is what defines me, not someone else's opinion that comes from their own misunderstanding or their own lack of information. But this is what defines me, not anything that anyone else has ever said. And this was what lines with my truth. And then it's like when you begin to resonate with that and vibrationally shift to be that, then you can like really take it into the head center, the heart center, the sacral center, aligning the body. And then we do a practice. And this is why the program is so important, because we do a practice in group and we do it by Zoom, and it works beautifully by Zoom, but where we have a practice where we give you a space to stand and be in that being and to express from that place, and where we meet you and help you to reset your nervous system. Because how many times have you ever thought, oh, I really want to speak my truth here, but I know if as soon as I do, I'm going to get the bam, it's like, so that you're going to get that pushback, you're going to get that criticism, you're going to get that, your nervous system knows that. So it will stop you from speaking and from showing up in your light and in your truth and in your beautiful sovereignty, in your knowing self. It'll stop you as a form of protection from even showing up in that way, from speaking in that way, because it's been trained to say, if I let my light shine, it's just going to get hurt, right? Yeah. But so that's the part that we do on the embodiment and assimilation to help to repattern the nervous system so that lets go. And you don't, like, you get the signal that it is safe. It is safe to be your beautiful, brilliant self and to show up with all of your light. And then beyond that, we can move into the piece of sovereignty, which reframes everything. It's an opportunity to reframe where you can recognize, oh, that was a mirror that taught me about love. That was a mirror that taught me about forgiveness. That was a mirror that taught me about gratitude,
Mhm.
you know? And yeah, it's a very transformative process. It's embodied transformation, as we said.
So this program, I know what you're talking about, but I don't think our listeners do. So you have developed a program that's called Living from Your Sacred Feminine, the CARITAS Journey to Embodied Transformation, which is a program that is specifically designed um, to help people move through this seven-step healing process to help move through the book and through the healing process. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the book, and I'll tell you that the book has a lot of stuff about what women specifically have um, uh, traveled through, shall we say, even
Mhm.
over time. I mean, from the way that the story of Adam and Eve has been interpreted, we talked about higher expression or lower expression. It's been
Mhm.
interpreted and kind of pasted on humanity in the lower expression, but there really is a higher expression version of that story.
Mhm.
And, as it is, it's like there's a lot put on Eve for
Mhm.
the guilt, for the shame, for the blame, for the weakness. There's so
Mhm.
many things that have stemmed from that. Women as property, women as, even the witch trials. Women were
Mhm.
assumed to be witches because Eve in the Bible was shown to be susceptible to demonic influences and therefore couldn't be trusted. So when things were happening that couldn't be explained, like plagues and illnesses and weather patterns and all that kind of stuff, it was assumed that the women were being influenced by demonic forces. The only way to stop it was to burn them.
Mhm.
um, and then there was like the hysteria movement in the 1700s. There was the hysteria actually comes from the Greek word hysterikos, which means suffering in the womb. And so if a woman was too emotional,
Yeah.
then she was labeled hysteria. And the number one treatment for women's mental disorders at that time was to remove the womb. So we've been through a lot as a collective,
Yeah.
um, as a feminine. And there's a way where these things just kind of keep showing up and rearing their heads. And so if we can get to the root of them, and that's where it really ties into the feminine. When we get
Yeah.
into the root of those things and like reframe that root, pull out that root and reframe it, we can let
Mhm.
go of a lot of those things. And that enables us, it really does shift our sense of safety, the ability to say, oh, I don't have to just walk around being fearful all the time,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that you've probably said that. I just want to acknowledge it as well. Uh, I believe I heard you say that it's not only um, historical, but it's the present experience. You know that, and I know that if I wasn't married, I wouldn't have the awareness that I do have of how we we have a culture that is so toxic in many ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it's not toxic, that there's not toxic masculinity, um, that men don't experience toxicity as well, but toxic masculinity as it relates to the feminine and the experience of what it is to be a woman is something that a lot of us, I don't think, bring into our conscious awareness, um, because in many ways it's been normalized. Um,
It has been, yes.
yeah, and
There,
it's
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. You would
I was
like.
just going to tell you, I was reading my book as an audiobook. So I'm working on that as a project also.
Yeah.
And the sound engineer that I've been reading to, his wife was an actress. She still works in film, but not in front of the camera anymore because she had this experience where it was in her contract that she would not do scenes with nudity or with sexual violence. And then she was on set and that was called for. And she said, whoa, no, wait a minute. I said, I won't do this. And they said, well, here it is. You do it or you won't work again. And so she left the set, and of course, she did get blacklisted where she wouldn't work again. And it was just, so, now she does other things, but she was a part of a documentary called Brainwashed. And he recommended I watch that. And I wish I had seen it before I wrote the book because I would have been even stronger in my language.
Yeah.
But this documentary, it's hard to watch because it shows it's from the film industry. It actually gives 5 different filming techniques that are taught in order to create the depiction, I guess, of the male gaze and the female subject, or the female object. So the male is the subject who is gazing. The female is the object who is gazed upon. And it really creates this power dynamic. And they show how it's taught and used in films. And we don't even recognize it.
Right.
But it's called Brainwashed because it brainwashes the men as well as the women.
Yeah.
The men to be that gazer, that luster, and the woman to be like feared as prey, basically. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's been there, like it's in everything. And yeah, so it's powerful, and it is true that it has been set up. And what it entrains the men to is not aligned with their core value system any more than it is aligned with ours.
Right.
It's not a service to any. I know the female experience because it's the one I've lived.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to live the male experience. I don't think that you guys have an easy time of it either.
Yeah. Just all the examples of behavior in our modern culture and society that are not in alignment with the truth of who the divine masculine or the divine feminine either. So, with that in mind, I think it would be a great time to have a little bit of a spiritual practice if you would be willing to just give us a little taste of a spiritual practice to help support us being in alignment with our truest self, deepest self.
Yes, I would love to. Um, okay. Wow. I'm trying to feel into which direction is best to go here.
Hmm.
I've talked a lot about the embodiment. Um, we've also talked about some things that are kind of heavy on the heart. Um, so how about, we'll go with this one. Let's go for it. So just let's take a moment and just call on source in whatever name you choose to use. Or as Dr. Habīb started out the podcast with a list of uh, names in many languages, whatever is the most resonant for you, just take a moment and just call directly on your source and make the intention to fall into that connection with source. I like to imagine this call on our source, ask to send that pure divine light, and imagine a ball of pure divine light like a large ball of pure divine light right in front of you, and to bring everything to face this pure divine light. Your eyes, your nose, your ears, your mouth, your throat. You can like square your shoulders and turn your heart center into this ball of light. Imagine your rib cage facing toward this ball of light, your solar plexus, like squaring your hips to face this ball of light, and just imagine yourself right in front of this ball of light. And just allow the radiance of this light to, like, to shine upon your body and upon your skin. And to let this light penetrate through your pores. And to let this light come in into your body. And you can use your breath as you inhale to draw this light into your body. Just imagine that being drawn in through your pores into your body. And as you exhale, just kind of imagine like scooping up any of the clutter or any of those blocks and barriers that might be kind of shaking loose from that. And you can use that to use your breath to blow those out of your body. And as you inhale, draw that light in through your pores, through your tissues, and into your fluids, and all the way into your body. And just imagine as this light is like the electrical system of your nervous system. It's like the electricity that travels through your nervous system, your electrical circuitry in your body. And just imagine this light traveling through your body and resetting the circuitry with this pure divine light. And just let it infuse throughout your entire body. And with this next inhale, as you inhale, just imagine drawing all the parts of yourself into your vertical core, the core of your body. And that's that very center, halfway front to back, halfway side to side, like this pillar of light at the center of your body. Let's draw this light in to that center and draw all the parts of yourself into that center. And as you exhale, just let yourself drop down and land into your hips. And as you exhale, release any of the clutter. And again, inhale. And as you inhale, draw all of the parts of yourself into the very center of your body, halfway front to back, halfway side to side, along that vertical core. And as you exhale, drop down, land into your hips. And when you do, just kind of lean back into your spine. Let yourself roll back and lean into your spine. And again, inhale in that light and just let that light pour into all of your body and pour all over you, and let yourself be like a sponge and receive that light into every pore. Let it infuse into you. Let it cleanse you. Let it purify you. Let it illuminate you. Let that light infuse into all of your being. You can imagine this light as it comes through the top of your head, like that vertical core of light that's like your own internal. It's like the filament of the light bulb. You know how the electricity runs along the filament of the light bulb. And when the light bulb gets brighter, it's because there's more electricity running along the filament. So as you inhale that light into that core, let it intensify that light along that central filament. You can feel that light coming through the top of your head, through the center of your head, halfway front to back, through your throat, halfway side to side, through your heart, through your rib cage, through your solar plexus, through your abdominal cavity, through your sacral center, to your pelvic floor. And again, inhale, draw that light in, and let it intensify that vertical core. Exhale, drop down and land into your hips, lean into your spine, and just rest into that vibration of that pure divine light. And let your entire being be infused with that vibration. And be the light. Let the light infuse you as you are infused into the light. And be the light. Be the light. Be the light. There for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Habīb.
So, for this program, just as a reminder, I mentioned this earlier, but that this book that we're talking about is available at fearfoodfemininepower.com. And this program, Living Your Sacred Feminine, the CARITAS Journey to Embodied Transformation, is available at the same website. So fearfoodfemininepower.com/program. So thank you so much, Debra, for sharing a little bit about your journey, a little bit about the impetus for the book and from the book itself. Any final words of wisdom or any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to actually read this from the book because, you know, we can, when it comes to healing, it's like one of those things at any time that can bring us benefit. But it seems, a particular importance at this time on our planet as so many of just like the existential things that we've been talking about as they relate to food and the, you know, sustenance and caring for the planet, with the concerns about climate change as they relate to toxic masculinity and fearful femininity, or, you know, and all the things that stem toxic femininity as well, all of the things that stem from us not living true to ourselves, to what we're created to be. There is a time of, you know, where we can stare it in the face and say, wow, we're doomed. And there's also a time where we can stare it in the face and say, wow, we have an opportunity to evolve as a collective of humanity. And just like we talked about coming into that place of the feminine alignment in order to commune with source, the highest calling of the woman is to lead a man to his source so as to reunite with source. I mean, to his soul, so as to reunite with source. I believe that we have that opportunity on the collective level right now. And as women, we've been conditioned to wait for permission, wait for a man to like open the door to lead the way. And there is at with where we are right now, we can't. And it like the men don't live in the female existence, not so much. You know, I mean, we all have inner feminine and inner masculine, but to really, it's like we can't wait. We're out of time on waiting for someone else to figure it out and open the door and lead the way. Um, as women, we need to come together and we need to do it now. We need to do it from a place of embodiment, from a place of just like being that conduit that is here to lead, that or to open that portal and that pathway for the humanity to come back into, to return to their soul so as to commune with source. And that is what will help to shepherd the evolution and to shepherd the people along through the evolution that we're going through on our planet right now. So the final words in the introduction say, our transformation is of paramount importance as our human consciousness is evolving and our planet is in dire need of healing. We women must step into our power and leadership in a feminine way, a way that creates synergy with the masculine to create to create a catalyst for collective evolution. Our time is now.
May we all be a catalyst for awakening, um, for opening, for returning to source, and for being the light. Yeah.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Debra, for joining us. Thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, if you would please take one breath to pause and reflect for just a moment on what stays with you from this conversation with Debra. Mm. Thank you, Debra, for carrying the message that you are holy, that each of us is holy, and inviting us to embody that. So may something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, please like, share, and comment on this episode. Please follow Beyond Names. To make an appointment with me, please visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light, may you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.